how to make my homemade Italian wedding soup. This is one of my favorite recipes. I make it when I'm sick or when anybody's sick in my family because it's such a warm and hearty and comforting soup. And the funny thing is, Italians do not serve this at their weddings. It got its name from a mistranslation of the history of these ingredients being such a good marriage together. So the funny part is it's more about the marriage of the ingredients than the marriage of two people. So that is sort of the history of Italian wedding soup. And I always think it's funny that people think they serve this at Italian weddings. They don't. I'm sure they could and people would love it, but they just don't. But anyways, this is my recipe for it. It's really easy. A lot of the ingredients are things that you probably already have in your fridge or in your pantry. And it's something that you can make, and it actually is really good even the next day or two. So it's an easy process. I'm going to walk you through it and show you just how easy it is. Now you can use any ground meat really that you like for this. A lot of Italian wedding soups are made with ground chicken. You can use ground beef, ground pork, ground turkey, or a mixture of any of the ones that you like. For this one specifically, I just used all ground turkey because when I created it, that's what I had around. But I do like a mix of beef and turkey, or beef and pork is a good mix as well. So just experiment and use what you like. First, I take half of a large onion and finely chop it. And then I add it to a skillet over medium heat with a little bit of olive oil and just a little bit of salt helps soften the onions. And then I just let this cook down for a few minutes until the onions have softened and become translucent.
Then add in 1 garlic clove that's been minced and cook for about 30 seconds, being careful not to let the garlic get brown.
And then I just set that aside to cool. In a separate bowl, I place 1 slice of bread, and then I just soak it in a little bit of whole milk. All you need to do is add enough to really just cover it and make sure that it's well soaked. I just let the bread soak in the milk just for a few minutes. This is a little bit of an Italian secret. I learned this one from my grandpa. But what this does is create a really soft and tender meatball instead of something that's really hard. I use sprouted bread for this one specifically. You can use any bread that you like or that you have around, but I do cut the crust off of the bread as well. And then I just chop up about 1/3 cup of fresh parsley, and what that does is just really create a really fresh, bright, herbaceous taste to the meatballs. So as you can see here, in a large bowl, I have the cooled onions and the garlic, and then I just add the 1/3 cup of the fresh parsley chopped into the bowl. To that bowl, I add about 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now you can leave this out, especially if you're making this for kids and you don't want it to be spicy, but you can adjust the spices however you like. I really like it spicy, so I add about 1 teaspoon. Then I add in 1 room temperature, lightly beaten egg, and just stir that up. And then I add in the soaked bread and milk and just kind of break that up a little bit with my hands. I also add in 1/2 cup of freshly grated parmesan. And it's important that it's freshly grated as well because that will enhance the fresh flavor of the meatballs. And then to this I add 1 pound of organic ground turkey. I like to use a fork to mix it up, but I also use my hands to mix it up as well, and that really helps just incorporate everything. But you want to make sure not to overmix because then you can create a tough meatball, and nobody wants that. And then you can add a little bit more salt and pepper to this as well. So preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Line 2 baking sheets with aluminum foil, and then I like to use a cookie scoop to scoop out the meat mixture, but you can use just 2 spoons for this as well. You really want to try to make these uniform size because then they will cook evenly and you don't have to worry about some being done and some other ones not being done. So using the cookie scoop is really helpful for this. And just scoop out each meatball onto the aluminum foil lined sheets and bake at 375 degrees for about 15 to 18 minutes. Depending on the size of the meatballs that you make. You should get about 30 meatballs for this. And then meanwhile, prepare the soup. I like to use butter and olive oil for this because you get the flavor of the butter, and then the olive oil will also raise the cooking temperature. Melt those in a large pan. I add in the other half of the large onion that is finely chopped. I also add in 1 cup of chopped carrots, and about 1 cup of chopped celery. You can use more or less of that, kind of depending on the size of the celery stalks you get and how much you like celery. Sprinkle on a little bit of salt and allow those veggies to soften over about medium heat for about 8 minutes. And then to that add 1 teaspoon of dried thyme and 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. You can't have an Italian recipe without oregano, right? And then add in 1 garlic clove that is also finely minced. Just stir it around and allow those to cook together for just another minute or so. Also being careful not to let the garlic brown in this as well. To this I add the kale. Now with the kale, it is about 1 bunch of kale. And I remove the large stem from the center, and then I rinse it off and dry it really well, and then just chop it. 1 bunch of kale is about 3 cups, I would say. Measurements don't have to be perfect. You can really add as much or as little as you like. And if you are not a kale lover, you can add spinach or escarole or some other leafy green to this instead. And then add a little bit more salt. Then stir it around with the vegetables to soften the kale and let that cook for another few minutes until the kale has softened a bit. And to this add 1 cup of diced tomatoes and 4 cups of veggie stock and 4 cups of chicken stock. Now you can also use all veggie stock. That's what I do most of the time because I usually have veggie stock around. But I do like the mixture of half and half as well. So it's really your personal preference. And then here is the secret with Italian soups and sauces. A lot of Italians won't tell you this, but we like to add in Parmesan rind. So when you buy a thing of Parmesan cheese, it has that rind at the end that you don't eat, and you just shave the cheese down until you get to that point, and most people throw them away. You can actually store them in your freezer and then add them to soups and sauces. I like to add it to my marinara sauce at the very end, kind of at the point you're at right now, where it's going to simmer. And this adds a very rich, salty, sort of nutty, earthy flavor that you can't really get from anything else. And it makes the soups and sauces really special. So if you have not tried doing this, I recommend trying, and you'll see a huge difference in terms of flavor. And then once the meatballs are done cooking, you can add those in. So bring the soup to a slight boil and then reduce it down to a simmer, and for about 30 minutes. If you have the time, I like to let it simmer for at least an hour. I do think that it helps the flavors incorporate much nicer. And this soup is almost better the day after, just because the flavors incorporate a little bit better, and it just tastes amazing. And of course, you don't want to eat the cheese rind that is in the soup. Once you've simmered it and it's ready to serve, you can remove it. I just leave it in and just kind of work around it. That, my friends, is how you make Italian wedding soup. It's pretty simple, as you can see, and you should have most of the ingredients in your pantry, and it's not a super long list, which is really nice as well. So this soup is really, to me, is comfort food. I love making this on cold days. So if you make the soup, please let me know. If you like this recipe and this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.